raise your right hand. Do you promise or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please have a seat.
Sir, please state your name.
Dean Goodale.
And Mr. Goodale, do you know my client, Jeremy Goodale?
I do.
And how do you know Jeremy?
He's my son.
Does Jeremy have any siblings?
He does.
And can you tell the court the names and ages of Jeremy's siblings and where they're living at the present time?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Jacqueline Goodale is 28 years old. She's a nurse, and she lives here in Fairfield with me. He has a sister also, Camille, 1 year younger, 27 years old. She's a chemist living in Washington State. The next sister is Sophia. She's also here today.
We're having a hard time. At least I think we're having a hard time hearing.
Is that better?
See if you just speak straight into it.
He also has a daughter, Sophia.
Yeah.
She's, where am I at? 25 years old, I believe. How'd I do? She's currently living in Guam. And he also has a youngest sister, his sister, Olivia. She would be 22 years old, and she's currently living with her sister in Washington State.
Prior to Jeremy's arrest in this case, where was Jeremy residing at?
He was living here in Fairfield with me.
Who was all living at your address on Hempstead Avenue here in Fairfield at the time of Jeremy's arrest?
Myself, my daughter Jacqueline, and her son Dominic, and Jeremy.
What is Jeremy's mother's name?
Christine.
And you and Christine are no longer married, is that correct?
That's correct.
During your marriage to Christine, what did you do for income?
During most of the time I was farming full time.
Did Christine assist you in the farm operation?
It was kind of a split operation. There was my full-time job, and then we had some side operations going for the family. She helped with that, yes.
Can you describe your respective roles in operating the farm?
I had the primary responsibility. I ran the greenhouses and the field operations, and we had some dairy goats, dairy cows, chickens, things like that, and she helped the chores with those animals.
All of that farm work, that sounds like labor-intensive work. Is that true?
Farming is a lot of work, yes.
When you and Christine first separated, did she take any of your children with her?
The kids were mostly teenagers and living 6 miles out of town on a farm, so their proclivity was to go live in town with their mother.
Okay. And after your separation and subsequent divorce, did Christine remain in the area?
For a while.
Okay. Was there a period, at some point, did Christine no longer live in Iowa?
Yes, she, at some point, met a new boyfriend that was very domineering, and he basically dictated what they would do, and she ended up leaving Fairfield.
And where did she move to?
Colorado.
How old was Jeremy when Christine moved to Colorado?
I believe 7. No, I believe 10.
Okay. As I understand things, generally the divorce would have happened around 7, and she would have moved to Colorado when Jeremy was around the age of 10. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Based on your observations, what was Jeremy's relationship like with his mother after she moved to Colorado?
Well, initially there was some contact, some phone calls and things, but again, it wasn't really a relationship with his mother anymore. Phone conversations were being dominated and commandeered on the other end by her current boyfriend. So his relationship with his mother, kind of non-existent really. It was with something else.
Okay. After Christine moved to Colorado, did she ever come back to Iowa to visit the kids?
There was one time, I think she visited the one time that Jeremy did visit Colorado, if I'm recalling correctly, she may have been to town and picked him up for that trip.
Any other instances of Christine returning to visit with her children you can recall?
No.
Did Jeremy ever visit his mother in Colorado? I think you just alluded to that.
Just the one time.
Can you tell the court about Jeremy's one-time visit with his mother in Colorado?
Yeah, with a telling detail. We kind of knew in advance that it could be a sketchy experience for Jeremy, so I actually had a safe word for him when we called on the phone, and the first time I talked to him on the phone, he used that safe word.
Okay. So do you recall originally how long it was planned that Jeremy was going to go visit his mother?
Approximately 1 week.
And did Jeremy stay for the duration of what was anticipated?
No, he did not.
He used his safe word, and you made arrangements to have Jeremy return to you in Fairfield. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe he might have been 10 or 11 years old at the time. They told me they were just going to send him on a Greyhound bus and send him back home, and I said, no, you're not, and to make sure that he flew back.
Jeremy was 12 years old when you sold your interest in the farm 6 miles out of town and you moved into the town of Fairfield. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When you moved into Fairfield, who all made the move with you?
Myself, Jeremy, and his sister, Olivia.
How long did the household consist of primarily you, Jeremy, and Olivia?
3 years.
Okay. And then, as I understand things, a few months before Jeremy's arrest, Jackie and her son Dominic also moved in to the family home. Is that correct?
At that time, Olivia had moved out, and yes, Jackie and Dominic moved in, yes.
Okay. What does Jackie do for a living?
She's a nurse.
And what is Jackie's typical work schedule like?
Chaotic.
Was Jeremy involved in the care of Jackie's son Dominic?
Repeat that, please.
Was Jeremy involved in the care of Jackie's son Dominic?
Sometimes, he definitely spent a lot of time with him.
Did you observe Jeremy to have a good relationship with his nephew Dominic?
Absolutely.
In an earlier question, you responded Olivia had already moved out. When did Olivia move out of your house?
After graduation, she moved immediately to Iowa City to attend college, and that was 2020, 2019, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It was 2019, I believe.
And after Olivia moved out, it would have just been you and Jeremy alone in the house until a few months before Jeremy's arrest when, when Jackie and Dominic moved in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In 2020, when Jeremy was 15 years old, the COVID pandemic hit the country. How did COVID impact Jeremy's day-to-day routine? His
mom kind of abandoned him.
Take your time.
Interpersonal relationships were so important to him, and we spent 2.5 years in a global war against interpersonal interactions. It devastated him.
Did COVID play a part in your decision to move Jeremy from the Maharishi School over to the Fairfield High School?
Yes, sir.
And why is that?
Yeah. Sitting at home staring at a computer screen, there's no point in paying extra money for that, as far as I'm concerned.
Did you feel, let me strike that, during 2020, during the COVID pandemic, was Jeremy's entire curriculum based on online classes?
For a good period of time, yes.
And how was Jeremy performing with his schoolwork when everything was online?
Not very well. I was a single parent at that time. I had to go to work. I had to provide for the family, and I was to leave a 14-year-old kid at home by himself. He had to be online because that's how they were getting their studies. It was an utter disaster, you can imagine. He was not doing his work. He was, no matter what I seemed to do, since he had access to the internet, I couldn't keep him from playing video games, and that's pretty much what he did all day. And it set up a terrible cycle of reprimand and then laying out what I expected from him and trying to support him every way I could, and then realizing he wasn't doing what I wished, and the relationship it was really rough.
So you feel that the pandemic not only affected Jeremy generally, but also your relationship with your son?
Definitely.
In 2021, when Jeremy was 16 years old, and I've referenced this a couple of times before, a few months before his arrest, Jackie and Dominic also, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In the months leading up to November of 2021, did you notice Jeremy struggling?
Yes, sir.
And what were your observations about that?
I knew he was smoking a lot of marijuana. I tried to do everything I could to stop him from that, from sitting with him, talking with him, reasoning with him, explaining to him how it's not good for his brain development, trying to go, punish him, ground him, or do I was just at my wit's end. I had to go to school every day, and he was, again, during COVID, he was at home by himself, and there was no supervision. It was an utter disaster.
Did you observe Jeremy having any emotional breakdowns during this period of time?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court about that?
He was very emotional, and he would sometimes, he'd literally break down crying, and it was and screaming some very self-deprecatory things about himself.
And these were all in the months leading up to November of 2021, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Goodale, if someone were to ask you to describe your son reflecting on his entire life prior to his arrest, how would you describe Jeremy?
You know, he was troubled, but he was also, highly intelligent. He did extremely well at times. So as a parent, you're hopeful, and you kind of focus on the positives and hope to work toward through the difficulties. Realize that in 2021, the year this horrific crime happened, he was Student of the Month in April at Fairfield High School, and also the tennis MVP that same year.
Is it a safe assumption that you thought Jeremy was turning a corner with his level of maturity?
I was certainly hoping so.
Were you concerned about Jeremy's maturity level?
Yes, it was very clear to me that he was probably, in terms of emotional and intellectual maturity, he was probably at the bottom of the curve for his age group.
What observations did you make that caused you to question Jeremy's maturity level?
Specifics, I don't know if I can come up with a specific example. It's just observing his behavior on a day-to-day basis.
Did Jeremy have a driver's license or a school permit?
No, he did not.
And why not?
I certainly wasn't encouraging it. Well, based on his behavior and the things that I was concerned about, my primary concern for him leading up to this was that he would commit suicide.
And given your concerns, you didn't feel that Jeremy was mature enough to have a driver's license or put himself in that situation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you be able to describe a fond memory that you shared with Jeremy over the years for the court's consideration?
If I can get through it.
Take your time.
I mean, there were many things. We played tennis, we camped, we fished. One of the things that I was most proud of him for. From an early age, he had school field trips, and then oftentimes they went to Jefferson County Park, and there was a woman there that was in Fairfield, will know who I'm talking about. It went by Toad, and that's not a derogatory term; it's an endearing term in this case. He loved her lectures and the nature walks and the bird watching and all this. He developed an interest in ornithology. He's quite fascinated with birds, and of course I encouraged that. I bought him some books, gave him material to learn more, and also there's this Fairfield's an amazing place with some very interesting people. There's a woman in town by the name of Diane Porter, and she's a world-renowned naturalist, photographer, and she doesn't have the technical title of ornithologist she should. She's a bird expert extraordinary, and she would give birdwatching tours and lectures in town as well, and I began to attend some of those with Jeremy. During her lectures, she would often engage the audience in questions, and people would raise their hands, and she'd call on someone. Well, Jerry would raise his hand after almost every question, and usually there'd be several other hands going up. Sometimes there would be no other hands going up, and he was called on several times over different lectures that he attended. She was so impressed with him that she gifted him a very expensive pair of field glasses.
Mr. Goodale, since Jeremy's arrest back in November of 2021, have you maintained contact with him?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the court generally about that?
Usually once a week. That's pretty much when he was at the juvenile center, was about all we could manage. The driving distance and everything, and it was nice. Those were, we tried to hit the weekends, so we'd have an hour with him. And then since he's been in Fairfield, the visiting's been a little less flexible. Not quite every week I've seen him.
You also maintain phone contact with him as well?
Texting a little bit, yeah.
Mr. Goodale, as you know, Jeremy is going to have a lot of rehabilitation ahead of him while he's in the prison system. Will you continue to be a major support system for Jeremy as he works to improve himself?
Of course.
Mr. Goodale, you've expressed to me previously that you haven't had an opportunity to make any public comment on this horrific event before. Is there anything that you would like to express here today?
When this first happened, my first instinct was to reach out to the Graber family. Upon receiving advice from legal counsel, I was advised not to do that. I'm just so sorry.
That's fine. We appreciate you being here today, Mr. Goodale. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you. Any questions?
I'll have you turn the mic towards you.
I'm good, Aaron. Thank you.
Mr. Goodale, you had mentioned that Jeremy Goodale spent 9 or 10 years in the Maharishi School here in Fairfield. Is that correct?
I did not mention that, but I think that's correct.
Well, I guess I was kind of deducing that from you saying that he went to public school starting in 10th grade. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
So kindergarten through 9th grade would have been at the private school?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he attended school there consistently through those grades, is that right?
Yes.
All right. Were there ever any behavioral issues with Jeremy while he was at the Maharishi High School?
I haven't seen the official record or anything, but he might have had a couple minor, scuffles or something. I'm not sure what's written up, but maybe not. It didn't seem, he was in a class with a bunch of rowdy boys, and he was one of the rowdy boys.
Okay. And was how would you characterize his academic performance while he was at the Maharishi School?
All the way up until the pandemic hit, he was nearly an A student.
And did Jeremy want to stay at the Maharishi School, or did he want to switch to the public school and go to public high school?
I remember having a conversation with him. I don't think he was averse to it. He certainly wasn't that attached to Maharishi School.
And was he friends with Chaden Miller while he was at the Maharishi School?
He'd been friends with Chaden Miller since he could walk.
Okay, so they've been, how would you characterize their relationship since that time? Were they close friends, best friends, part of a friend group? How would you?
I'd say part of the friend group. I never thought of Chaden as being his best friend or anything, but they've just known each other forever. Jeremy was more of an athlete, and I didn't view Chaden like that.
Okay, and did Jeremy participate in sports from the time he was young?
Yes.
What kind of sports?
He played soccer, he played softball, he played tennis.
Was he always able to be a member of a team?
Yes.
Were there ever any behavioral issues that you noticed or that were ever reported to you by his coaches?
During sports, no. Okay. Sometimes perhaps when he was in coaching situations, he was a little difficult.
But for the most part, he got along with coaches, could participate in sports. Would that be true?
During his year playing with Fairfield High School tennis team, he was shining. He was a great leader for the team. He was an exemplary tennis player and was quite a team player. Team popular with the team. Good with the coach. Loved the coach.
I think Jeremy at one point in one of the interviews indicated that he had planned on playing possibly collegiately. Is that correct?
If he would have worked at it, he definitely had the ability to do that. Yes.
And tell me if I'm wrong about this. The way that I understand your testimony concerning the COVID issue was kind of a turning point for him. Would that be true?
It hit him pretty hard, yeah. There's struggles, and then there's things that exacerbate struggles and things that alleviate struggles, and that was definitely an exacerbating effect, yes.
And in November of 21, had Fairfield High School returned to in-person learning.
And when now?
In November of 21, or that semester, had Fairfield returned to in-person learning? Do you know?
In my mind it hadn't. I haven't read it, but I believe it had. But there was still social distancing. This is a great term for what he didn't need. There was masking and other things still going on. But I believe they were back in school full time. And I guess part of the reason that my memory's confused is that they weren't in school that day. But I guess that was a teacher thing going on.
Okay. And at the time that Noe McGraber was killed, had Jeremy been doing well in school for the most part, or how else would you characterize it?
Struggling for the most part.
Was he failing classes?
I believe he was.
Had his teachers reached out to you?
No.
Had you had any communication with his teachers or made any attempt on your part to reach out to them?
I had not.
Whenever you indicated that Jeremy was the student of the month in April, that was April of 21?
Yes, sir.
And what would qualify him for student of the month in April?
Like I said, he had the ability to excel, and I think he had a good month.
So it'd be grades and possibly participation in other extracurricular activities or doing well in those. That I assume that's what would qualify him for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a little surprised because I thought he was, I know he's capable of being a straight A student, and he wasn't quite there, but he was doing a little bit better at that point.
And would a teacher have nominated him for that particular recognition, or do you know?
Was it the principal? I'm not sure. I'm sure there was a teacher involved somewhere, yeah.
You indicated that you had a primary concern that Jeremy might harm himself. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did you ever reach out to a mental health professional to seek out any assistance for him, or did you take any step along those lines?
Thanks for asking that question. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on that. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So he'd gone to Optime when he was younger for apparently 6 months or so.
What is Optime?
It's a local place here in town. They have counseling for all kinds of things.
Okay.
Then for a while, maybe a year or two, he didn't really do anything. But then I noticed he was struggling. But he was more than struggling with there was he was always he had these abandonment issues, and it was so emotionally he was hurting. He was psychologically not doing well. But also there were some physical manifestations. He's kind of had a chronic cough and couldn't do things with his athletics like I thought he should be able to. Like I thought there was something wrong with his health. So there's a functional medicine clinic in Iowa City, and I took him up there, and they had a multifaceted approach, kind of a holistic medicine approach. The doctor up there did a complete exam. They did a blood exam. They looked at things, as many health metrics as possible. Then the treatment that they advised. So I went ahead and signed him up, and then the way they do it, he paid a very healthy sum of money up front, and then he goes for like 6 months of treatment. Primarily after the doctor's visit, and then diet recommendations and supplement recommendations. The treatment was every week. I'd drive him to Iowa City, and once a month he was to meet with a mental health professional, psychologist, I believe. So we started going up, and primarily what seemed like they were doing was some kind of biofeedback, and he started getting that treatment up there. And so he'd go up there and do that once a week. Eventually he ended up getting a home kit, and he wore it at home. And it was basically just kind of, they'd watch something on a screen and then get biofeedback. And they did EEGs and monitor his progress. And based on what they showed me, it looked like there was some EEG verified progress he was making on that. The other aspects of the treatment up there, again, were visits with the doctor and diet and supplements, and then once a month he was to meet with a psychologist. The first month visit with the psychologist was when it came up. We went up, did the regular EEG, and it was just a tag on to the regular treatment that he did every week. The psychologist didn't show up. That's kind of weird. Kind of a profession, business, medical health institute doesn't have someone show up for their appointment with a patient. It seemed very bizarre to me. So, obviously I complained to the staff and management about that, and then still continued with this treatment. So, and again, they didn't like put it in the next month. They said, well, let's just pick it up at the next scheduled appointment in the following month. So he continued with his biofeedback and everything else. The next month came, and it's time to meet the psychologist, and the psychologist did not show up. This happened 3 times, and they were billing me, by the way, for these consults. So obviously, I did not continue with that, and we got into a spat with getting money refunded. And that, so that didn't work out. So I knew a wonderful woman in town that was quite brilliant. Extremely compassionate and highly intelligent. She was a counselor here in town too. Her name was Julie Bloom, and So I was working to get him an appointment with her, and she was traveling in and out, so it was hard to set something up. I finally had a tentative appointment for him to see her, and it was a couple of weeks out. Before he was able to meet with her, she passed away from cancer. So I'm not one to give up, so I kept pursuing things. I also had a friend that I knew from college that was a well-known psychiatrist in town, and I was reaching out to him to see Jeremy when he lost his license for some malpractice business. I didn't give up then either. I kept looking for local people to be able to work with Jeremy, and the caliber of counselors varies, but primarily was I just didn't find anyone that I felt would be a good fit for Jeremy. And I was continuing to look to the day this happened.
So the first series of treatment that you tried to get him, that where the either psychologist or psychiatrist did not show.
Psychologist, I'm pretty sure.
Sorry, if psychologist, what was that time frame?
In terms of how old Jeremy was?
No, well, let's take it from November of 2021. So back up from there. How long before Noe McGraver's death would you have did that counseling with Jeremy?
3 or 4 years.
Okay, so he would have been around the age of 12?
Roughly, yeah. 12, 13 maybe, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
You may have been asked this, but you've continued to have regular contact with your son since his arrest. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a brief follow-up, Mr. Goodale. You were asked about the counseling efforts you made on behalf of Jeremy and related that those efforts were back when he was around 12. I think perhaps to clarify for the court, those efforts at counseling had a lot to do with abandoned use at the time, correct?
Yes, and one more clarification. I mean, the functional medicine clinic might have been 12, but other arrangements I was making were later, 13, maybe 14 as well.
And ultimately, as you described, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like Jeremy didn't get any counseling with the difficulty you described, correct?
It's surreal, yeah.
You would agree with that?
Yes.
I don't agree.
Sir, you can step down.